Right, thank you. Thank you for being here. Good evening and welcome to our first official MXDC Academy workshop. Thank you for spending this evening with us. Before we begin, I would like to recognize Pablo Lanzmanas, our event coordinator, for his efforts in making tonight's event happening. My name is Margot Paz. I am the president of MXDC. It's an honor to welcome you to this event. Over the past few years, we have hosted a variety of workshops for professionals, covering topics such as financial planning, the visa and immigration process, and more. We've also organized networking events and discussions on work-life balance, all aimed at supporting the growth and success of our community. This year, in response to the evolving professional landscape, we're making it a priority to provide practical tools and skills that strengthen and empower the Mexican professional community across the DMV, all under the umbrella of the MXDC Academy. In this workshop, we will learn how to craft an effective resume and cover letter, two essential tools for landing a great job in the DMV area. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for the evening, David Flethcer. David is part of the career advising team for juniors and seniors, master's students, and PhD students, as well as recent alumni of the School of International Service at American University. He also supports applicants for nationally competitive scholarships through the Office of Merit Awards. In addition to his advising work, David enjoys representing the School of International Service at events like Preview Days, Eagle Summits, and New Student Orientations. An innate coach, he's passionate about helping students clarify their career goals and develop the critical skills they need to successfully launch their career. Please join me in welcoming David Flethcer. Can I give you this?
One time it's good to have a tie. So thank you very much for having me here tonight. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm humbled that so many people would come out at 6:30 at night on a beautiful evening in the spring in DC to hear me talk. I've done this for 20 years. This is what I do for a living. Trust me, I can keep talking, but I believe I've been asked to make this a conversation, and I'm very happy to do that. This should never be a lecture. I wouldn't want to sit here for the next 45 minutes, hour, just wanting to ask questions. So please, as we go along, this should become a conversation. Just raise your hand or just start talking. Resumes, cover letters. Oh my goodness, where to start? I've been doing this for 20 years. 20 years of looking at resumes. I had no practical training. I was not a graduate student who went and got a degree in higher education. I was a marketing professional. And what you do with careers is market yourself. Resume, cover letter, networking, interviewing. These are all marketing skills. So I take it very seriously. When I give somebody help with a resume, they don't have to follow my instructions. They don't have to follow best practices. But I'll often say to you, I'm helping people that are going to use good advice who are going to compete against you. So it's not a threat. It's just, please, if you've been told by somebody what a best practice is that might work for you, take it seriously. Doesn't mean you have to only use that. I give all the room in the world, all the leeway for people to use what they want. But if you've got a 3-column, multicolored resume that you're going to pull out tonight, and you're working in international relations, I'm not sure that's what's necessary. I haven't been told by employers. And that's where I get almost all of the guidance that I use. Every semester, every season. When I talk academic terms like semester, please forgive me. But every season, I work with employers. I work with hiring professionals, talent acquisition professionals. And they will tell me, I prefer 1 column, not 2. I like information to be bulleted. Why bulleted? Hello. Bulleted because it helps the reader come back to the left margin. Hello. Hi, David Fletcher. Nice to meet you. So let me write some things on the whiteboard to help give some visualization. So your resume is the most important document that you've created. I can't say anything less. It's the most important document that you created during your lifetime. It's what you've used to go to university, what you've used to apply for jobs, and everything in the future with your career. It really does demand attention. So the most important thing on your resume would be, any guesses? Name! Name! It's the most important thing on your resume. Now, I don't know that I would blow it up and make it a size 40 text, and some people do. They craft this really big section at the top. Keep it in perspective, because the rest of your resume should only be a size 10 to 12 point text. 10 to 12. It should not go above, it should not go below. If you're making your resume size 8 to get everything on there, you've got too much information. Now, how long can a resume be? 1 page, 2 pages, as many as you want? Depends on who you're giving it to. If you're working for the US federal government, it could be unlimited. If you're working in academia, you want to go teach at Georgetown, it can probably be pretty much unlimited. But if you're turning it into most organizations, probably a 2-page limit, and that can be stretched a little bit depending on how much experience you have. But I would say keeping it to 2 pages is a really good courtesy step. So again, size of text matters. Font. Not all fonts are created equal. And this is where I'm going to get really nerdy. There's a book called Just My Type, and it's all about fonts. Oh my goodness, that's who I am. I love this stuff. It talks about how fonts are created and what they are useful for. So not every font would be great for your resume. If you're trying to make it look unique, be careful. What you want is a resume that's easy to read. Now, who here thinks all resumes are read by humans? Who thinks they're all read by machines? Who thinks it's somewhere in between? Probably somewhere in between. So there are systems called ATS, Applicant Tracking Systems. And they're never going to tell us what font you have to use to appeal to an ATS system, because all these systems are different. They're not universal. But most larger organizations will defer to this. Everybody know who McKinsey is, the #1 consulting firm in the world? They got 1 million applications last year. There's no way that they're going to do that by human eye, so they're going to use ATS. Almost any large organization. So making your resume easy to read, legible, professional is the goal. If we do nothing else, make it so that it can be read, because if it does get read by a human, it needs to be legible. So after name, phone, email, mailing address? I don't think so. I don't like that for security reasons. I don't think you want the world knowing where you live. You can always change an email or phone. It's painful to do, but you can't just get up and move because you now have some cyber stalker who found your resume and now knows where you live. So I would never put an address on. Some people will just put city, like Washington, D.C. That's pretty harmless. Now be careful. I'm a stickler. When I say that for 20 years I've been looking over resumes, I'm really tough on resumes. If you're going to write Washington, there should be a comma. Lots of times you don't see one. But Baltimore, comma, Maryland. Richmond, Virginia. They all put a comma. It should be there. Some of you like to use ... Be careful. Lots of you use 1 dot. There's 2. Australia doesn't put 2. Lots of Latin American countries don't put 2. In the US, you need 2, or my favorite is just leave them off. If you're not sure, just leave them off. You're just chancing it to make a mistake by putting more punctuation in. Should you put your LinkedIn URL? I would. Because if your resume is limited in space, in what you can use, how much information you can keep on there. Think of LinkedIn, that's the place where you can park everything that you don't have room on your resume. No employer will ever come up to you and say, you've got too much information on your LinkedIn. It's none of their business. It's your personal professional profile. So LinkedIn's a great place to have everything you want. Every award, every leadership role, every job that may be a little bit old for your resume, but it's never too old to have it on your LinkedIn profile. So that should be the header. Don't use the word phone next to phone. I'll often say, do you really want to work for an employer who doesn't recognize what a phone number is? Or an email? So you don't need those words. Sometimes you see templates and they'll have name and you put your name next to it and phone and email. I would leave those off. You want simplicity. You don't want the reader to get bogged down in lots of information that doesn't need to be on there. You could. I mean, if you absolutely have to have it, you could. Yeah. So that's at the top. What should come next is up for debate. What do you think would be a good thing to have as your next topic or first topic? Any guesses? Professional summary. I like that. And we're going to talk about that. So not an objective. Why not an objective? Objectives have fallen out of favor. They used to be very popular. 20 years ago, you would put an objective, but the problem with an objective is it should be very specific. I want to work for the World Bank. I'm going to solve poverty, and I'm going to do all these things specific to that job. Then every other job, you need to change that. Because you're probably going to mention working for the World Bank. And the moment you mention the World Bank, Amnesty International has no interest in you. Human Rights Watch, or I think Human Rights Campaign, has no interest in you. The moment you mention another employer. So you don't want to put an objective up there and give information that would prejudice another employer. So a summary is a really great idea. Summary, and to be very specific, a summary of relevant qualifications. What does that mean? It means that rather than randomly guessing, I think I'm going to put some information on my resume and hope that the employer is going to like it. Likes pets, funny, attention to detail, Microsoft Office. So I'm now guessing, I'm just throwing things up there, hoping the employer likes me. What we'd rather do is take this summary and make sure it aligns with the job description. Job description. Sorry, running out of board there. Make sure that the things that you're talking about, taking up valuable room on your resume that go in this, and it should be about 5, maybe 6 bullets. No more. Why? It's a summary, not life story. The moment you start putting 15, 20, 30, you're using up the entire page. What we want to do is find what were the most important things in the job description, and we want to put them here. If you have them, you want to put them there. So it could be fluency in Spanish. Probably be up there. Highly organized. Exceptional skills with Microsoft. Now we know what they want to see. Now they're going to pay attention to this very first section because it echoes the things that they were looking for. But that means this summary goes away each time and has to be redone. So your resume can't just be parked on LinkedIn and you send it off for every job. You really should recreate it for each job.
So the summary is bullet points, not like a paragraph.
Employers don't like reading paragraphs. It slows them down. Blocks of text are how we learn to write. It's not how employers want to read. Here's the, yes?
I have like skills, is that okay?
Turn it into qualifications. They're the same thing, skills. It could be list of relevant skills, but make sure the skills you're talking about aren't just random, that they come from that job description.
Yeah, but it's like languages, social statistics, and blah, 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 instead of skills qualification.
Good, good. Yes, the reason why employers don't like reading text Most employers, if they're not using ATS and it's a human, they're spending under 1 minute looking at your resume. I've heard terrifying numbers like 15 seconds, 30 seconds. When somebody has 300 resumes to get through in one day, they are not reading front to back, top to bottom. They're not. They're probably ignoring the cover letter, which we're going to talk about. Oh my goodness. So you spent all that time writing this wonderful cover letter and they're never reading it. Why? Because if they don't like the resume, cover letter is not likely to bail you out. It's not. So we want to get this right. And making sure this summary that sits at the very top of your resume is exactly what the employer was hoping to see, with words that catch their attention. If they do like your resume, they'll read further. I had a talent acquisition specialist last November when I summarized her thoughts, and I said, because she and I were presenting, I said, so you're telling everybody you read 15 to 30 seconds. She goes, no. That's my initial look, and if I like the resume, I'll continue or I'll come back to it. So people will view your resume if they like what they see, if it's easy to read, if it's concise, if it's well written. So keep that in mind. A summary, job to job, it's going to change, will evolve. After the summary, what would be the next topic that we think an employer would probably want to see?
Education.
Maybe. How many of you are still in school? Anybody still? Master's degree, undergraduate? Still in school. So if you're still in school, education should probably be at the top. It buys you a little bit of interest from the employer because they're going to expect you as a student to have education at the top. But if you're no longer in education, if you're no longer getting a degree, you've completed your education, then experience should go to the top under that summary. So whether it's education or experience, and you can call it many things. It could be professional experience, work experience, professional work experience, but keep it to education. I've seen people write really creative things like educational endeavors and background. Like, just call it education. Yeah, I mean, why take up a lot of room? Make it pretty simple. Should probably be all caps. You want it to stand out, maybe in bold. And again, we never really talked about fonts, but make it a clean, easy to read font. I once had a student, I can't even remember, it was like Olympus, gold plate, Helvetica. I mean, it was just this crazy thing. And I asked, why did you use a font that's almost hard to read? It looked like hieroglyphics. And the answer was, I wanted my resume to stand out. I said, well, nobody's going to read your resume. That's the extreme. Make it easy. What are some good fonts? I was telling you about Just My Type, Calibri. Anybody use that? That's what Microsoft uses. They love Calibri. There's always Georgia. There's Times New Roman. There's Garamond. There's Arial. There's Courier. There's lots. I'm all for making it look creative, but make sure it can be read easily. The moment it becomes something challenging for the reader, they're going to stop. And then there are also styles that you use. So whether it's all caps, be careful about all caps with information other than headers, because you run out of room. If you're going to put your school or your work in all caps, you might not have enough room on that top line, and I'm going to tell you why you want to make sure it stays and conforms. So styles, things like all caps, bold, italics, underline. These are all designed to set information apart, make it look different, but it doesn't always make it look easier to read. I can guarantee if you take information, put it in italics, underline it, Bold, I don't think has much of a problem, but underlined italics makes it hard to read, in my opinion. And you may say, oh no, I can read it easily. But think about who's reading your resume. And if you have the chance to talk to an employer, ask. If you ever go to a workshop where you've got an employer talking about applications, what style do you like the font to be in? I would ask. Do you mind if it's underlined or bolded, italicized? Get information. Can it be 2 pages? Get information from the employer. They'll answer if they're the person reading resumes. So, if you're putting education, name of your school, not the degree, not the degree, the school's name, and the location. This is meant to signify the right margin, the left margin. School, location. Then the degree underneath. Because if you've stayed at the same school, and you got an undergraduate degree, a BA, maybe a master's degree, an MBA, and then a PhD, you'd want them all listed under one school. Did you do a master's and PhD at the same place? And that's how you want it. You want your PhD and your MA or MS underneath. If you're going to use punctuation, make sure you use punctuation. And then the dates, just the finish dates. You don't need your start date. You really don't. You don't need the day you started your degree. And then if you want supporting information, sorry about that, I should not have written location in all caps. Then supporting information would be in bullets, honors, coursework. Be careful about coursework, it takes up a lot of space. If you're going to put coursework, list it horizontally across the horizon. So 1, comma, another, comma, comma, as opposed to bulleting each one on top of one another. You're going to run out of room on your resume, trust me. You want every line to be really well thought out. So if we're not putting education and we're doing experience, the same rules are going to apply. So master's degree would be up here, and then a different space, different school, bachelor's degree. Yes.
Most recent first.
Most recent, yes.
Or most relevant.
Everything in your resume should really go in reverse chronological order. When you start, and okay, here we're going to get into really the whole thing about manipulating readers, and that's what we're doing with our resume. We need to be understanding that there are rules that we cannot defy. You can put information all over your resume wherever you want, but you can't violate natural laws. Time, space, gravity. You're like, gravity, where does that come in? Time and space. You cannot put an older job up here in a category and randomly throw your current job below that and then another one and just randomly park them wherever. Because the employer looks at that and goes, that's an error. They made a mistake. I know what you're saying, but I'm manipulating them to read what I want where I want it. If you're going to do that, you have to follow rules by creating a new category. So maybe you have international experience that you want always to be at the top of your experience section, and you're going to call it international experience. That was 2 jobs ago, but it's the one listed here. Then additional work or current employment could be underneath in a different category, and that could be the more current work. Understand what I'm saying? Hopefully it's not confusing. It's really about keeping things in chronological order, going in reverse. Always think of it this way. An employer wants to know what you did 10 weeks ago more than they want to know what you did 10 years ago. So always bring older information down, newer information up. Yes?
A question about formatting. I was having like the titles of the sections in boxes just to kind of like give it a different look. Does that mess up with the ATS? Sometimes when I upload it to a system, it doesn't read it correctly, so I wonder if
I'm going to say, if you're fearing that some of the design elements that you're putting on your resume may be hampering it from being read, I'd be cautious about it. You may want to sacrifice some of those elements. Because I'm all for creativity, using color, using certain design elements, but it may not be picked up. ATS may be very particular, and it may not be reading. Yes?
You mentioned about international experience. Does it look more important or better than the current job, even if that was years ago?
You're talking to the guy who advises the School of International Service. Oh my goodness, yes. In the opinion of all of my students and alumni, yeah, international experience is really important. It gets attention, especially in a city like DC. This is an international relations town. And you may have noticed it doesn't have big manufacturing. We don't, create Teslas down the street or, Microsoft. It's a government town. It's an international relations town. So having international work gets attention. Absolutely. Yes?
International things. Where do we put our legal status?
So that is up to you to use as you see fit. If you're working in fields where it needs to be on your resume, you're working for the OAS, you're working for the World Bank, but in most cases it doesn't need to be on there until
they
you...
don't care because we are definitely legal citizen of a country, so they'll hire us. But everywhere else, we might need sponsoring, but I've been told not to say that we need sponsoring, so...
I've never told people to put citizenship, nationality, any of those things. Yeah, those may be asked for in CVs in Latin America, and Europe, and Asia. Oh, another thing, don't put your picture on your resume. Interview models or actors and actresses, that would be fine. But if not, you don't put a picture on your resume. I can't tell you how many people have done that, and they're like, no, it shouldn't be on there.
I have mine on 2 pages because I feel like I'm at an awkward stage where either a page and a half or 2. So I added professional accomplishments, like 3 bullet points of the 3 main accomplishments I've had. I was just wondering what your thoughts.
That works, but don't ever fear that an employer in their mind is saying to themselves, why isn't that page and a half resume 2 full pages? That's what we fear. Oh my goodness, I need to fill that in and add more things. You probably don't. If it were a page and 3 lines, yes, you need more, or you need to take those 3 lines off or get them up on page 1. But if it's halfway down the second page, that's a legitimate second page. There's no fear that that white space will be held against you. Oh my goodness, why didn't she put more? So don't add filler. And what's filler? Every country you've ever traveled to, right? Every country listed one atop. Bolivia, I've been to Ecuador, I've been to Panama. No, they don't need you to talk about travel. And in fact, if you have that under a skills section, did you fly the plane, pilot the boat? No, it's not a skill to have traveled to other countries. Now, residing and working in other countries, but that's going to show up under your experience. It will say every country you've worked in. So having a list of countries you traveled to and recreated in, probably not needed.
Worked in?
Worked in, again, it's going to show up under experience because you're going to have the location on there. I had a student who thought he was being cute, wrote that he had been to every country in Europe except, and he listed the 3 he hadn't been in. Good. It's getting the reaction I was hoping. Because that's, really, I don't want to read what you haven't done. Here are all the skills I don't have. Right? Now it becomes even funnier. It's like, oh, who would do that? Well, he wanted them to know he'd been to a lot of countries, but he put the ones he hadn't been to, somehow thinking that was impressive. So again, keep it logical. What would an employer want to read about you? So with each experience, you probably want to keep the number of bullets fairly succinct. Not 10, not 15, not 20. If you've got a job and you've got 20 bullets listed under it, you probably have too many job duties. If you've had multiple positions, then make sure the current job has about 4, the previous one has about 4, the one before that maybe 3, all at the same organization. What you want to be showing with your resume is growing responsibility, meaning that you don't want to have 2 bullets for your current job and the job you had before, 16 bullets. Makes it look like you're not doing much work now. You were working really hard before. Doesn't matter about the amount of time. Yeah, but I was at that job for 5 years. I've only been at this job for 5 months. You want to balance that out. You want employers to see that this current job, where you were at the World Bank in Washington, D.C. as a financial manager. And you've been there from 2024 to present. 5 bullets, maybe 6. Yes?
Should I put World Bank or should I put financial management?
Should put the organization first. The reason for that is every position you've held at the World Bank, you want to be able to list under the World Bank, Washington, D.C. So if you're a financial manager now, but 2 years ago you were a financial coordinator, and before that you were an intern. So you want to show that growth and development within the World Bank at all 3 positions. And if you lead off with the title, then it messes up formatting. Then you're going to have to write World Bank, Washington, D.C. under every time you work there. And that's wasting space. A little bit of transparency. I started out at American University with our School of Business. I have an MBA. I'm the wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm not the person who wants to save the world. I want my students to save the world. I'm the person who wants all my students to get paid well to save the world. And I started out in the business school and I stole their format. I didn't steal it. They're still using it. And we use it. And Columbia University uses it. It's a very good format. It's a business format. There's nothing new or catchy about it. It's been around for 20 plus years. It works because it does not falter as you have certain information. Whereas when you do this and put the title on top, you have to make exceptions. You have to keep changing the rules. So you really want it to be organization, location, title, date. Then for each bullet, action verbs. Use an action verb and be consistent with your verb tense. Worked, managed, implemented, exhibited, created, coordinated. There's 1 million words in the English language. English just passed 1 million words a few years ago. That means you should not say worked, worked, assisted, worked, assisted. Use the same terms over and over again. Vary them. You should probably never repeat more than 1 or 2 of those throughout your entire resume. Really use your knowledge to put different action verbs in there, because employers often don't go much beyond that bullet and those first few words. So that may be the majority of what they read is that action verb and maybe 3 more words. And they move on to the next bullet, and they may only read 2 or 3 bullets, skip these and move on to the next job. Yes, employers cut corners. They take shortcuts. When they're busy, when they're reading 300 resumes, they're taking all kinds of shortcuts. So you want to make sure information is your information is prioritized. That the most important would be at the top, the least important would be the bottom 2 bullets. Make sense? Yes?
Location thing. So you said it's Washington, comma, D.C. or no comma after Washington?
Always a comma between Washington and D.C. or Arlington and Virginia, Baltimore and Maryland, Silver Spring, Austin, comma, Texas.
Say Mexico City, comma, Mexico.
Correct?
And we don't say Austin, comma, Texas, comma, USA. You
can. And you should. If you've got countries on your resume, if you've got Mexico, if you've got Canada, you should probably have USA. That's a very good practice. Yeah, there shouldn't be an exception just because you're in the U.S. that everybody understands Austin, Texas. It should say Austin, Texas, USA. That's a good practice. Good point. Yes?
Another question. What if we have or had a job that it doesn't have much to do with the whole resume, but we did it for many years? And we don't want to, if we avoid it, they will question why did you do those years?
So you should probably have something on your resume, just minimize it. You could always move it into a different section, additional work. I do that all the time with students and alumni. I'll say, look, if you worked at Home Depot, if If you worked at Starbucks, you don't want that at the top. Put that down here. You worked retail, food service, the sort of jobs that aren't necessarily career building. They're more just jobs where you got paid. Move them into additional work and put them down at the bottom. I have a lot of students that will do childcare. I'll say childcare provider, make it sound good, but move it to the bottom. There's nothing wrong with those jobs and those skills, but if they're not career relevant, Starbucks, yeah, Home Depot, childcare, just put them in a different section. So again, that's the manipulation of the reader. And that's what we're doing. We are taking your information and putting it in the best possible format to get their attention. But you can't violate laws of nature, time, space, gravity. So that's why if you want your World Bank job to be here and your job at Home Depot to be down here, you have to put them in different categories if you're currently at Home Depot and the World Bank job ended last year. Because again, you can't put things in a time sequence that's not consistent. It's got to be reverse chronological order all the way through. But your sections can certainly jump around.
So clarify it. If I'm currently doing childcare, but like my most relevant experience was previous, can I put that previous?
Put that up top and put childcare down at the bottom. But it will say present. It's not like you're able to cheat on the dates. You're still going to be honest with those. But you will move the categories around to where they have the best impact for you. This is all about really entitling you to do the things you need to with your resume, but you've got to be logical. The moment it looks illogical, like why in the world does, this job from 3 years ago sit at the top and the next job that you are doing now is right below, they question that. But if it's in a different section, a different heading, you're fine. You've explained to the reader, my current work is here, my previous work is down here.
One of the most challenging things I find is to tailor every single bullet point for every single application, and I try to avoid that. Do you suggest just like changing the summary or our previous recurring jobs?
Change the summary, and with some of the bullet points, try to find a word from that job description and embed it somewhere. So if you've got 5 bullets, you're maybe only making 5 word changes. Not entire statements. Just try to get a word in there. Maybe it's the action verb, maybe it's something that falls in there. But the summary is really where you're trying to get their attention. So don't worry so much about these sections always needing to be completely overhauled. That's a lot of work. That is so much work. Do that with the summary. It will save you a lot of time.
You suggest putting words in bold, like random words in bold, catch their attention?
You can. And I'd rather see them in bold than underlined. I don't know about you, but it's hard to read when things are underlined, I find. But bolding certainly works. Italics is another thing that doesn't necessarily make words easier to read. It makes them stand out. And again, that's 2 separate things. Trying to make things stand out and trying to make things easier to read are often not the same thing. So yeah, italicize things with caution. I had somebody who did their entire resume in italics. They wanted it all to stand out. It didn't. It made it harder to read. It's like cursive, right? It's not easy. It's not easy to read. You really want it to be looking like print.
Using AI to help us tailor, is it okay?
I have no problem with AI, and you shouldn't either. But don't allow a computer to take your humanity away and then it looks robotic. You need to be the person who looks over anything that you find from ChatGPT or AI and make sure it sounds like you, and it's honest, it's truthful. We can certainly spin things on our resume, but we can't lie. You do not want to be lying on your resume.
So if I am doing a PhD, but I have a full-time job, is it relevant to put it on the top when I have like 2 years?
It's up to you. If you felt like your PhD would really be more important for the jobs you're looking to apply to, put it at the top. If not, put your work at the top, and the PhD would be in the next section down. Great question.
And I know you said no objectives, but what about things like passionate about whatever you're...
That can go into the summary. Try and put some of that in there. If you've got a skills section at the bottom or core competencies, and you've got this whole laundry list of things, again, try and filter them up into the summary, but only if they're needed by the employer. That big list of skills that you've got on your resume, if it's not relevant to the employer, they don't need it. Yeah, but I want them to know about my Trello and Qualtrics, and if it's not in demand for that job, it doesn't have to be on there. That's one of those things, park it on LinkedIn. It'll be there for them to see when they go to your LinkedIn profile. So, same thing can be true for leadership positions, right? You're in a leadership role. That should be on here. MXDC, Washington, D.C., president, your term, and then what do? Run meetings, help with membership, help with committees, oversee others in the group. So it should be listed the same way. Organization, location, title, and date. And really pull things across and get them off the left side if they shouldn't be over there. Dates and locations are so irrelevant that putting them on this side is really a bad idea. Not where the employer wants to see them. Organizations and job titles, yes. And then action verbs. That's what should populate that left side. We're banishing this over here. Pulling it off the left margin where it's not nearly as obtrusive. It doesn't get in the way. Questions? So we can jump into cover letters. Everybody's favorite.
One last question with continuing with my website. If we're studying something currently, that could be in the top, and then experience, and then the rest of the education, and that looks weird.
Explain that again.
She says she's studying a PhD, if that could be on the top, and then the experience next, and then her master's degree and bachelor's next.
Oh, no, it should probably be all education together. I mean, but in the summary, it could say PhD student completing degree in 2 years. And also, don't put personal pronouns. I, me, mine, our, we. The entire document's about you. So putting those in there is wasting time and space. You don't need them. I did this. Of course you did. Who else would you be talking about, right? I mean, think about it. You wouldn't be writing about your friends. You wouldn't be writing about your team, your parents. You're writing about yourself. Everything is I, me, mine, we, our. So pull those personal pronouns off your resume. It's going to save a lot of reading for that poor talent acquisition person who's struggling to get through your resume in 30 seconds.
Document like whether she, her, or he.
No, those, yes, you definitely need, their, but not we, our, mine. Okay.
I recommend those, like he, she, because I've seen them, but I don't know.
Oh, talking in third person? Like he did this, she did that?
You know, when some people introduce themselves in a mail or something.
Oh, I see. So they don't really take gender, just we or they. But again, you shouldn't have any personal pronouns on your resume. Nothing should be describing you in the first person. I did this, we did this, meaning me, or they did this, meaning me. It should be just performed, provided.
Regarding format, what about textbooks? Like, does it change? Like, does it make AI not be able to read through that textbook? Does it help with formatting? Like, do you recommend?
So blocks of text. I can't tell you all about ATS and what it will or won't read, but I can tell you that when it's a human eye, they want it to be bulleted. I'm thinking that text is probably not much better for a computer, because again, you're putting just a big block of words in there that it's got to get through. But bulleted information, they may create those programs so that it's drawn to where the bullet is.
I usually like a text box. Sometimes
Oh, a text box.
Exactly, to for
Skills
format.
and-
Oh, I see. So graphic elements on your resume. I'd be careful about putting too many of those on there, because somebody had just said that they weren't sure that theirs was being picked up because they had a block on there.
It's better just to put it in.
I'm going to say just be delicate when it comes to creative stuff, colors and design elements, because if it gets thrown out, then you've harmed your chances.
Because I have two different versions. One that is like a summary, and a short one, and one that is like broader with all the experience. On the shorter one, I have like some experience here, and then I use the little space on the right to give more information.
That's your call, but I've never had an employer say we'd like to see two 2 columns, 3 columns. One. Everything in one column, and use the entire space, whenever you can. Yes.
Like AI or whatever. There's many places that they will make you fill it in as well within their template.
Right, on there.
Can we, in some of them, not all of them, you can go crazy, right? Because there's no limit, unlike everything else. Shall we go crazy or we shouldn't go crazy?
If they're giving you an almost unlimited amount to park into their text boxes, their online portal, I'd do it. I'd put as much as you could. That would be an invitation to use more.
Because I know that at the IDB, for example, the system would then use that to rank things because they didn't really look at this. It will take that and give a score based on the amount of keywords, and that's how they will get you ranked.
Love the IDB. We've done 3 site visits there. It's different when you go as a visitor than working there.
But yes, it was.
Yes.
I have the same question because I never know whether I need to copy paste my CV and the bullet points, or if it's a narrative, or if it's a test and they want me to write it out a different way. I don't know.
If they're asking for the resume and they're having you insert all that information, then I would add more. I doubt that they're going to judge you. Well, her resume looks like this, but then look at.
Sometimes it's uploading the resume and then it's supposed to fill it out for you, and then that's when I notice that the titles are not matching, so that's why it's not captioned.
Yeah.
But I never know if it's just copy paste, which is so stupid. Like, you know my resume.
It's up to you. It's up to you. Okay. Any more questions about resume? So, what I have said tonight is general information. There are always exceptions.
Oh, question.
Yes.
References still used? Yeah.
What's that?
References.
References should be on a separate sheet. Use that same header that we talked about, name, phone, email, for your cover letters and for your references. Those should be separated documents. Some employers will say put them all in one PDF. That just means you make it all one Word document and then turn it into a PDF. But again, have that header at the top of each of those. You don't need that to be a repeating header on each of your resume pages. You can usually just use a page number at the bottom. Because if this is going to take up 3 lines, 2 lines at the top, you don't need that on page 2.
Publications?
What's that?
Publications.
Publications could probably be part of your resume, but if you wanted to have a publications list and you've got 15 or 20 and you need a separate sheet, I'd create a separate sheet. Yes?
With references, does it look okay, a phone number or email?
References can be whatever information you want to volunteer for them. I just looked over references today, so fresh in my mind. Name, title, organization, and write them down the page, vertically down as opposed to horizontally. So name, title for the person, their organization name, no street address, you don't need that, phone and or email. If you can give both, do it. If you can only give one or the other, whichever one. Hello? You don't need home addresses. And how many? Usually 3 to 4. 2 to 3, but 3 to 4 works. What should they be? If you're applying to go to law school, then it's good to have an academic reference in there. If you're applying to jobs, majority should be work references. So, resume, done. Cover letters. Now, very much like the resume and that summary of relevant qualifications, we're going to talk about cover letters needing to be specific and targeted to. The worst thing you can do is narrate your resume to an employer. They're not dumb. They know how to read a resume. They can read your information. They now, after spending 30 seconds, don't want a 5-minute letter that they have to slow walk because you're, hey, I graduated from so-and-so, and I worked here last year, and the year before I worked somewhere else. That's just reciting your resume. What a cover letter should do, again, is have your name, phone, email at the top, the date that you are going to send it. I could quiz you guys on old school stuff, but I won't. I'll just tell you. A cover letter traditionally covered a resume. You would have printed both out, you would have signed the letter, and it would have physically covered your resume. You would have folded in 3. Anybody here old enough to remember this stuff? You all look so much younger than me. I mean, this is like 20 years ago, we still mailed things out. That doesn't happen anymore. You fold it in 3, you put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it. And that information that would have gone on the outside of the envelope goes on the letter. If you're not putting it on there, you're sending an email, you're sending a memo. It should have the name of the contact, if you know it. How many of you are able to find the names of the employer's contact? Sometimes.
I know in my organization they really don't like it.
I see some, you know why? McKinsey got 1 million applications. Do you think the one person who's in charge of human resources wants 1 million people contacting them? Hey, did I get the job? Did you get my materials? Hey, you're going to talk to me. Most employers, if they're smart, keep that information anonymous, which means you're never going to get this person's name unless you have an inside contact. And if that's the case, which it often is, then who do we address it to?
I always address the hiring manager. Sometimes it does say who.
It could be hiring manager, it could be human resources. The great thing about either of those titles, even though they seem generic, manager, so I can just write MGR, is that it's going to get it to the right person. When you send it to whom it may concern, dear sir or madam, it could be anybody. It could go to the shipping department. You want it to go to hiring, and that's almost always human resources. So if we're still filling out that part, then just write human resources. Then
Never, the hiring manager is never.
it's a different person from human resources.
Yeah. So it's human resources, but then the hiring manager is the one who interviews you.
Yes, but if you're sending the letter in, most organizations, it goes through human resources. At American University, we've got 2,000 staff, and they hire everybody through human resources. Then it goes out to the hiring manager to actually talk to them. So human resources, then the name of the organization. So IDB. And then the street address. Street address, and then Washington, D.C., and zip code. That goes on the letter physically before you get to dear hiring manager, or dear human resources, or dear selection committee, or whatever you want to use. And then it should be 4 paragraphs. 4. Not 5, not 7, not 12, not 2 pages, 4 paragraphs. We're going to keep it very succinct, because if many cover letters aren't even being read, why do you want to go into an 8, 9, 10 paragraph, 2-page letter that may never get reviewed? So that's just the formatting. Dear human resources, dear hiring manager, whatever we want to call it, put a colon. Why not a comma? Comma is informal. So you're sending a message to a friend, a loved one, you're texting, you put a comma. You're writing to somebody you don't know, professional, colon. Skip a space, skip a line, and then don't say your name. Hi, I'm David, and I'm applying for... Your name's at the top of the letter. It's at the top of the resume they already read. You probably sent both as attachments to an email, and that's where I said, hi, I'm David Fletcher, and I'm applying to your position at the World Bank, and I've attached my resume and cover letter. So why would I then, in my letter, go back to, hi, I'm David Fletcher again? Redundant. So you would just start out with, I'm applying to the IDB for your financial manager position. You can say how you saw it on Idealist, saw it on World Bank website. And then you want to mention 2 key skills that you saw in the job description. Not 1, not 3, 2. And you're going to spend the next 2 paragraphs, 2 of the 4, talking about those skills. So the first one is just introducing what you're doing. I'm applying to this position at your organization. And you write out who the organization is and the position. Don't just say, I'm applying to your organization for anything. Employers don't like that. They want you to have a specific position in mind. So you're going to mention 2 key skills that we saw in the job description. You're not just going to randomly start talking about anything, because they're needing somebody with great financial modeling and the ability to collaborate well as part of a team. So those are going to be 2 things that you're going to talk about. And the best way to talk in an interview or in a cover letter. And how are we doing for time? That's an hour. You guys tell me when you need to get up and leave, because like I told you, I do this for a living. I'll talk until 10:30. So please. So 2 key skills that you saw in the job description. And you're going to talk about those using what's called the STAR method. Anybody know what that means? Situation, task, action, result. Some people have said they don't like that it's 4, and they've broken it down to 3: PAR, problem, action, result, or CAR, circumstance, action, result, or even SAR, situation, action, result. They cut out the task, because that can almost be combined with the action. Situation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Task.
Perfect. I got it.
Situation, task, action, result. So what does that mean? So if I worked on Capitol Hill and I wanted to describe the work I had done, I would say, I'm going to bring my skill set to your organization like I did on Capitol Hill. I worked in a busy congressional office, having to greet hundreds of constituents a week, answer phones, emails, and many other things interacting with the public. I was tasked with these things in a busy office in a 9-hour-plus day that started at 8 a.m. and didn't finish until after 6. So you want to set the scenario and you want to set the tasks. My actions, in order to stay organized and highly efficient in my role, I created logs and databases that tracked all calls, all visitors, all emails. The result of my actions were awarded a certification by the senator, by the representative, because we had the greatest engagement and best feedback ever for an entire year with our constituents. So you really want to boast. You really want to talk about something that has a tangible result. But again, what are we talking about? Something the employer asked for. We don't just randomly say, let me tell you about a time that I was really good at something. I was really good at something your team needs. And then what do we do with the second paragraph, or the third paragraph, excuse me. The third one, the same thing. The next key skill that they needed. So that takes care of the introduction first. 1 key skill, 2 key skills. The last one is going to be the conclusion. That's number 4. And that's where we're going to wrap it up. Always thank the reader. Thank you so much for taking the time to read my letter for the position. I'm now more excited than ever about the opportunity to talk to you further about my skills and what I could bring to the IDB. Keep it short. Yes?
We're sending an email.
You're sending these by email.
No, we're sending this by email. But in the email, the text of the email, how many paragraphs should it have?
That should probably just be 1. It's just going to be short and sweet, because the letter is what they're going to read to read your marketing.
So we don't copy a cover letter into the email. We don't do a.
Oh, goodness, no. It's just a paragraph that says, I'm applying for the position at your organization. I've included my resume and cover letter and references and writing sample and transcript and whatever else. And I'm excited to talk to you further should you have any more questions. And that's it. So it's 1 paragraph, very short.
What if the 2 skills, one is my previous job and the other one is something I'm really good at 5 jobs ago?
That's okay.
Valid?
Yeah. If it's important to that employer, you want to make sure you've pulled it out from the depths of your resume and put it on that cover letter, so hopefully they'll see it. But these need to be skills they need. The same thing with that summary. We don't want these to just be random items. They should be things the employer has asked for, because otherwise you're not getting their attention. In a competitive job market, you want to be the person offering what that employer needs, not just writing a nice letter, writing a nice resume, but they don't match up. You want to make sure you're a good fit. Cover letters are tough, so keep them short. 4 paragraphs is a lot easier than writing 8 paragraphs that you're just randomly trying to come up with for each and every employer. 2 key skills, not 3, not 4. And again, walk them through a framework to tell them a story. You are offering narratives. You're storytelling. You're giving a successful example of what you did for another employer that you would now do for them. Or it could be a leadership role that you're talking about. It could be an educational situation from class, from school. But it's something that's relevant to the employer because, again, it must go back to what they need. It's never changed in 20 years. It's always been focused on the employer. Whenever somebody brings a resume to me, I say, it's not what I want. It's not what you want. It's what the employer wants. We want to make that resume so that it sparkles for the World Bank, the IDB, Amnesty International, the Embassy of Brazil. Wherever you're looking, we want to make sure that employer pays attention. There are too many other candidates.
And again, bolding the words is okay.
It's fine. Just don't go crazy. Cover letters, I've even seen people put numbers or bullets for the 2 skills. You can do that. It's up to you.
And adding like your personal incentive or the reason why you're...
Just don't go crazy with that. 3 paragraphs later, you're still talking about your passion and your joy and your love and your grandma did this and that's why you're so focused. They know you love them. You would not be applying to their job if you didn't. So you don't need to spend 2 or 3 paragraphs. That was a direct message we got from Center for Strategic and International Studies, which I think is right around the corner. They even said to us, if you're spending 2 paragraphs telling us how much you love us and like our organization, we get it. You had us with the first sentence. You don't need to go 8, 10 sentences deep. I really like your organization. Of course you do. You want to work for us. Keep your materials simpler, not more complex. Target the employer. Keep them clean and easy to read. Have somebody look at them. If anything else, make sure a second set of eyes. I can't tell you how many people have said, oh, no, you don't need to look at my resume. My mom helped me, my aunt, my uncle, my roommate, my friend. It's fine. 15, 20 inconsistencies later, they're shocked. I'll say, the person you had read it meant very well. Their intentions were great, but they don't do it for a living. So you should send it to someone you trust. You know somebody who reviews resumes, have them look at it. Questions, concerns? You guys are amazing. Great questions. You're still awake. It's late.
Any last questions? We can go over.
No, because mine is about networking. It was done with maybe just a quick, I don't want to know networking.
I can talk about interviewing, networking, salary negotiation. But I won't because you're going to throw stuff at me at some point. Get off the stage.
Question. When we're talking about experience in another country in Canada, do we name the organization? We translate the name of the organization or we leave it in Spanish?
It's up to you. Some people put it in English and Spanish translation.
So the Mexican names are very long to begin.
They can be.
I do that at
They
work.
can be, yes. Read plenty, yes.
I know you probably talked about this before because I didn't write it for the CV. But would you add the volunteering section and or fellowship or other relevant networks that you might be relevant for that?
So it's perfectly fine to have a section on your resume that may not be paid employment. It might be volunteering, public service, community work, fellowship. Don't fear that everything has to be paid. Used to see a lot of resumes from students that would have their retail and food service work, and then they'd have these really meaningful, like mission trip to Africa. down, under volunteering as though it was something bad. And I would say, don't think that the employer cares about whether it's paid or not. Paid employment is often the work we wouldn't do otherwise, right? You don't want to make coffee.
This in my current job, what they did is like once I was hired, they made me send a resume, like an ugly one, with exact dates, whether it was full-time and whether it was paid, and that was to calculate salary. But they did, like, they don't care until, but like it could be as ugly as you want, like it didn't matter.
Yeah, so full-time, part-time, those terms don't always have to be on there. Paid or unpaid, that doesn't have to show up. You really want it to be what's meaningful work. And many of the internships that were in Washington, D.C. until recently were unpaid. I don't know if the IDB paid 20 years ago. I don't think they did. The UN? I won't get started. No, I will. The World Bank used to ask schools to pay for their students to come work at the World Bank. That's pretty savvy. I mean, that's brilliant on their part. But yeah, can you imagine that? Having to pay for your student to go work for somebody. That's pretty amazing. Anyway, thank you. You guys are amazing. I'm sorry I made a mess of the board.